Keywords of the novel. Devil Fruit Ability without pop-ups. Download the complete set of Devil Fruit Ability TXT, and read the latest chapter of Devil Fruit Ability. Chapter 1. Devil Fruit Ability. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Quick, fast. On the streets of a city in the southwest, a small group of soldiers were nervously carrying out evacuation work, but the background sound of gunfire and even roaring made their work extremely difficult. I hope they can persist for a longer time. Listening to the sound of battle not far away, a young man who looked like an officer said with concern. Bang! Just as the soldiers were evacuating civilians to the nearest shelter, a loud collision suddenly came over. Immediately after, people heading towards the shelter saw an armored vehicle flying over, and of course, they also saw the culprit who knocked the armored vehicle away. A monster similar to a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but obviously somewhat large and outrageous. Of course, people would never confuse it with a Tyrannosaurus Rex, not only because of the 3 huge spikes on its back, but also because of its much larger volume than a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Ah! The order that could have been barely maintained with the help of the soldiers disappeared, and the civilians who sought refuge screamed and fled towards the direction of the shelter. Although the soldiers wanted to continue maintaining order, it was regrettable that their meager strength could not stop the massive flow of people that was dozens of times larger than theirs. On the other hand, the Tyrannosaurus-like monster seemed to have been attracted by these ants in his eyes. No wonder, after all, the screams of 1,000 or 2,000 people are too piercing, let alone half of them are women. Damn it. Seeing the sight of the Tyrannosaurus Rex being drawn away by the people seeking refuge, a military officer cursed inwardly and quickly ordered his subordinates beside him loudly. Hurry up, grab the attention of that monster. Looking at the deformed armored vehicle on the street corner, and at the Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is about 3 or 4 floors high, it is absolutely impossible to say that one is not afraid in the heart. However, it is also impossible to see ordinary people being buried at the mouth of the dragon like this. Fire. As the order was issued, the soldiers using this excuse raised their weapons one after another. However, these soldiers have no confidence in whether they can persist until the people evacuate. After all, their hands are mostly light weapons, and the heaviest ones are just a few rocket launchers. Spell it. Just as the soldiers were making up their minds, a series of gunshots rang out. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. These gunshots did not come from their hands, but from the arrival of reinforcements. Hurry up and evacuate the people to the shelter, we'll leave this to ourselves. A Type 96 main battle tank slowly drove over, and as it passed by the soldiers, the commander said to the soldiers beside him. While conversing with the soldiers, the commander's dual-purpose machine gun, Gao Ping, kept firing at the Tyrannosaurus Rex. However, the 12.7mm machine gun bullet that could break a person's waist seemed to have no effect on that Tyrannosaurus Rex. Even if it hit the Tyrannosaurus Rex, it was easily ejected. No, it can't be said that it has no effect at all, at least the attention of the Tyrannosaurus Rex has been attracted. Obviously, being provoked by these ants in its eyes, this Tyrannosaurus Rex is also quite angry. Fortunately, tanks are not the only type of weapon. Boom. After aiming the 125mm smoothbore gun at the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the shell accurately hit the dragon. Surprisingly, although the shell hit the Tyrannosaurus Rex, it did not even penetrate the outer skin of the hit area, only making the hit area slightly concave. At this time, several more tanks and armored vehicles appeared. However, although their attacks made the Tyrannosaurus scream incessantly, they were unable to cause any significant damage to it. Instead, the pain from being hit triggered its ferocity. Roar. With a roar, after abandoning those ant-like refugees, the Tyrannosaurus Rex launched a 30mm machine gun shell resembling a blazing snake, and in just a few steps, it flew to the front of an armored vehicle. Then, its front paws began to strike with knives. The armored vehicle made of steel was like paper in front of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and after a burst of screams, it fell silent inside. After tearing the armored vehicle into pieces with just a few strokes, the Tyrannosaurus Rex turned its gaze to the nearest Type 96 tank. For it, if the 30mm machine gun of the armored vehicle is like a needle, then the 125mm shell of the Type 96 is like a hammer to it. Although not deadly, the Tyrannosaurus Rex cannot ignore it. The commander of the 96 that was being targeted had been venting ammunition on the Tyrannosaurus Rex from the turret with a Hi-Shi machine gun, and thus witnessed the tragic situation of the armored vehicle just now. After realizing that he was being targeted, he quickly ordered the driver to retreat. It may be unimaginable, but a main battle tank weighing over 40 tons like the 96 is not much inferior in terms of mobility compared to wheeled infantry tanks weighing around 10 or 20 tons, especially in terms of obstacle crossing ability, which is outrageous. The tank's tracks also have much less pressure on the ground than tires. Of course, none of these were important. The most important thing was that when they found themselves being targeted, the driver decisively ordered them to retreat, and this decisive command saved their lives. Just as the tank retreated, the Tyrannosaurus Rex had already swung its front paws and rushed forward. And it was precisely at this moment that the claws that were supposed to have wrapped the entire turret inside only managed to break through the tank's frontal armor. After a piercing sound of metal distortion, although the tank was not destroyed as expected, the Tyrannosaurus Rex's front paws easily tore a crack in the front armor of the tank, and the Rex could even see the frightened expressions of the crew members inside through this crack. Just as the soldiers were still fighting against the over 10-meter-tall Tyrannosaurus on the street, two commanding figures nearby were also cursing loudly. "Damn it, isn't that enough for the newly arrived third round of playing M1A2 against Americans? Why can't we even scratch the skin of this monster? How do I know?" After wiping off the saliva that sprayed on his face, the officer with a face full of saliva was also full of anger. Besides, this is not a tank either. We can't convert things related to tanks to this thing. Besides, these things have happened a lot in recent years, haven't they? Just as the two officers were raging there, a sudden explosion came from the battlefield not far ahead, interrupting their conversation. Originally, due to the narrow streets and the debris everywhere, a military off-road vehicle happened to be swept by the tail of that Tyrannosaurus Rex due to its inability to avoid it. Although the weight of an off-road vehicle itself, along with its occupants and various equipment, can reach a weight of several tons, it is still easily swept away by the monster's tail. Seeing this behind the scenes, the two officers who were originally still raging shifted their anger to another organization, which did not exist a few years ago. Damn the Ability Association, isn't it that this thing is only at level C at most? It's already at level B, it's not something we can handle at all. Since 3 years ago, this kind of thing called exotic beasts began to appear in the world one after another. A strength standard in this area has also emerged. C. Level, in this standard, is evaluated as battalion or regiment level, which means that at least one battalion or regiment's troops are needed to compete. Of course, after eliminating the opponent, one's own losses will definitely not be small. By the way, the reference point for military forces is the best equipped U.S. military in this era. The troops currently engaged in a fierce battle with the Tyrannosaurus Rex are tank and infantry battalions of a mechanized infantry brigade stationed nearby. The 2 tank battalions in the entire brigade only had 80 tanks, so they sent out the 2 tank battalions and the remaining infantry battalions because they received an emergency call for help. The original plan of the commander was that since the opponent was only at level C, the vanguard troops would first enter the city to cover the people's shelter, and the rest would wait until the remaining troops arrived before proceeding. But now that the opponent is B. Level, I naturally won't be the opponent of this monster in front of me. If I can go back alive, I must hang up the intelligence officer from that association. When saying this, the commander tightened his belt. Although he knew he was not a match for the monster in front of him, as a soldier, he couldn't let the monster ravage the city. Just as the officers and soldiers around were all determined to die, a voice of agreement suddenly came from beside them. "Those intelligence officers really owe me a draw. If you really want to go, remember to call me up. With the sound of speaking, one hand patted the officer's shoulder. As soon as my hand landed on the officer's shoulder, there was already a sound of guns being pulled out from around. We can't blame them either, after all, someone suddenly appears in our field of vision, and everyone will react accordingly, let alone on the battlefield now. After being pointed at by dozens of guns, the owner of the hand just now, a young man who was over 1.8 meters tall and appeared to be in his 20s, smiled and raised his hands, making a gesture of not shooting. Don't shoot, I came over to help after hearing the news. At this point, the officer also reflected, but he did not pull out his gun because there were already enough guns around. Yan Xiao, a C-level person, happens to be traveling and sightseeing nearby. As Yan Xiao spoke, he clicked on something similar to a wrist brace on his left arm. Soon, a screen appeared on the wrist brace, and a black-haired white woman in her 20s, dressed up as an OL, was looking at him. Eleanor, your intelligence went wrong again this time. Yan Xiao glanced at the Tyrannosaurus Rex chasing an armored vehicle. Although it hasn't reached level B yet, it's still at level C+. Although there is only a difference of one English letter between level B and level C, their strength is about 10 times different from each other. However, there are also some exotic beasts that always remain in a position of being neither superior nor inferior, both stronger than those at a lower level, but still weaker when it comes to the higher level. For such monsters or capable individuals, the ability association will give them a plus sign, and the monster in front of them is a C+ level monster. However, it is precisely because of this that the vanguard of this infantry brigade can persist until now, rather than being eliminated early on. Sorry. Eleanor said apologetically after seeing the fighting on the street through the camera. It seems that there was an error in the intelligence department's analysis. Although it was not a mistake made by himself, Eleanor is also well aware of how a mistake in intelligence by the intelligence department can pose a great threat to the commission-capable individuals or the local army responsible for clearing monsters. Forget it. She shook her head helplessly. This is not the first time, let me handle it this time. Remember to input the compensation into my account. Yan Xiao took off his coat. However, just as Yan Xiao took off his coat, Eleanor's panicked voice came from the screen. Wait, that's a C+ level monster. The intelligence of exotic beasts is usually lower than that of humans, but their strength is still there. Although there have been successful examples of cross-level warfare, unfortunately, there will only be more failures, and when failures occur, they usually come at an extremely high cost, such as losing one's life. The Tyrannosaurus Rex in front of me may only have a plus sign more than Yan Xiao, but in terms of strength alone, it is very likely to have more than 3 or 4 times more than Yan Xiao. In this situation, Eleanor, who has known Yan Xiao for more than 2 years, naturally cannot be in a hurry. However, after neatly placing his coat aside, Yan Xiao gave a relaxed smile. Don't worry. Immediately after, the people around only felt a daze in front of them. When they reacted, Yan Xiao had already appeared above the Tyrannosaurus Rex. A few meters above the Tyrannosaurus Rex, a purple light flashed in Yan Xiao's hand. By the time the soldiers and refugees around him recovered from the flash, the Tyrannosaurus Rex had already fallen to the ground covered in scorched black. I have already upgraded. When he said that, Yan Xiao's face had a hint of pride on it. Chapter 2. 3 years. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Ability, monster, and ability association did not exist in the past, to be precise, at least 3 years ago. 3 years ago, on a morning in September 2013, Yan Xiao, who stayed up all night in front of the computer, originally planned to eat an orange in the fruit basket next to the table, but ended up finding a strange fruit the size of a durian in the basket. Although Yan Xiao in Pingri can also be called a heartless model, such a strange and peculiar thing made Yan Xiao hesitant to speak for a moment. Of course, the most important thing is that the appearance of this thing is really bizarre. However, Yan Xiao didn't even throw away this thing, or rather didn't have the time, because Yan Xiao was fighting fiercely on the computer at that time. But by noon, when Yan Xiao finally had time to deal with this matter, he saw a lot of news online, many news about capable individuals that emerged overnight superpowers. This thing has been heard of by everyone, but not many people have seen it, and even if they have seen it, it may not be true. Looking at the pictures online about superpowers, Yan Xiao instinctively thought of the strange fruit in the fruit basket. And when the word fruit appeared multiple times in online messages, Yan Xiao's hand had already touched the fruit. Can you gain those abilities after eating this thing? Everyone has fantasized about becoming a hero, and Yan Xiao is no exception. Whether it's the anime mode of Ribbon or the Hollywood mode of the United States, the best shortcut for an ordinary person to become a hero is undoubtedly to acquire superpowers that ordinary people do not have, such as Spider-Man and Wolverine. Of course, there are exceptions, such as Iron Man or Batman, but Yan Xiao is neither as intelligent as Iron Man nor a tycoon like Batman, so there is only one way left. So, eat it. After cutting open the fruit with a knife, Yan Xiao ate it piece by piece. The specific feeling is hard to say, because at that time, this fruit seemed to have a kind of magic that attracted Yan Xiao to constantly eat it, until Yan Xiao ate the whole fruit, which was the same size as durian, before it was counted. As for the taste, there is no feeling at all when eating, but after eating it can only be said that the taste of this fruit is the same as its appearance. Quite strange. After eating this fruit, Yan Xiao also understood many things. For example, the devil fruit is the name of this fruit. When eating this fruit, Yan Xiao gained unimaginable abilities in the past, but at the same time, he was also cursed by this fruit. The fruit itself not only endows the person who eats it with a special ability, but also greatly develops the potential of the human body, that is, the power of the human body itself. In the past, even if one exercised their muscles like a governor, their own strength was still limited to the term human. For thousands of years, no one has been able to break this shackle. However, the fruit can break free from this constraint, and after a series of trials and tribulations, it can even reach the level of superheroes in European and American movies with the power of *** alone. By the way, the fruit obtained by Yan Xiao is called Thunderbolt fruit, which is a powerful fruit that can easily emit electric shocks. However, after eating the fruit, Yan Xiao did not speak up, let alone use his abilities in front of the public, because he was not yet clear about the society's response to the emergence of capable individuals. In the Battle of X, ordinary humans have considerable discrimination against mutants, and Yan Xiao is well aware that he, who has just acquired abilities, is unable to compete with the vast human society. And as he had imagined, after the initial surprise, the evaluation of capable individuals in society began to tend towards negativity. It's not because of jealousy or fear, it's just because some people, after acquiring the abilities bestowed upon them by the devil fruit, start acting like the character SE in the movie. Of course, it's the opposite character SE. These people have relied on their abilities to do many negative things, and of course, their fate is also the most tragic. It's not surprising, if someone often causes trouble near your home, causing you to cut off your electricity today and the internet cable tomorrow, you probably won't have any good face towards these people. Besides, some of them even did things they didn't dare to do in the past. At this time, some public opinion even demanded that Jing Fu arrest all capable individuals. Fortunately, as the number of capable individuals increased, Jing Fu also worried that forcing all capable individuals to the opposite would make things worse, so he did not adopt these opinions. Seeing that capable individuals in society have become mere street mice that everyone shouts and beats, Yan Xiao felt both fortunate and somewhat worried. After all, he is now also a member of the capable group and is in the same camp as the capable individuals. Fortunately, at this moment, a turning point appeared just as society's overall evaluation of capable individuals gradually became negative. News of fierce beast attacks began to spread in some remote areas. At first, these news did not attract people's attention. After all, with capable individuals producing news almost every day, these news simply did not attract much attention. Until one day, a group of elemental creatures composed of flames suddenly appeared in a small town in England and burned down half of the town. Many people finally understood what this day meant. Fortunately, the fire element did not seem to attack Xing, but only entered the town by chance, and did not actively attack anyone after entering the town. The burning of the town was only caused by its wandering in the town, so the casualties were not significant. Afterwards, the British government also quickly reacted, not only sending enough fire brigades, but also sending rapid response troops to the scene. However, even the rapid response troops had no way to deal with this purely elemental creature. In the end, they came up with the idea of water and fire fighting each other, and had the firefighters use high-pressure water pumps to eliminate this fire element. Of course, some officials suggested capturing it alive for research, but the question is how to capture it alive. There have never been such creatures on Earth, and if we really have to find a way, the town might have been burned down long ago, so it's better to eliminate them on the spot. Due to the large amount of image materials taken by the residents who fled the town at that time, although the British wanted to block the news, videos and photos about the fire element quickly spread worldwide. Just as people were still shocked by this creature that had never appeared on Earth in the past, another similar event occurred in a village in Malaysia. However, unlike the fire element that only reacted when attacked by a high-pressure water pump, this is an active attack on humans. The animal that attacked the village this time was an unknown but never before seen beast, and due to this beast, at least dozens of people were killed or injured in the attacked village. Afterwards, perhaps feeling that humans posed no threat to it, the monster swaggered and slept in the village it had attacked. Until the Malaysian army came knocking on it. At the cost of dozens of casualties, even armed helicopters were deployed, and the Malaysian military finally shot and killed this monster. After this war, countries also understood a truth, which is that this unknown creature has strong resistance to modern human weapons. For example, a 30mm caliber machine gun can pierce through an elephant and land on a foreign beast, but it may not even be able to dig a hole. Of course, cold weapons such as swords are still effective against foreign beasts, and they are very effective. However, having an ordinary human use cold weapons to deal with foreign beasts is like seeking death. After all, even if we don't mention anything else, the strength of the exotic beast itself is still there. As for why this happened, scientists proposed a viewpoint 6 months after the appearance of exotic beasts, which is that these beasts all came from another space, so they may have strong resistance to Earth's high-tech weapons due to certain laws, which also leads to missiles and other weapons not being able to exert the necessary power on exotic beasts. Fortunately, exotic beasts cannot appear directly in cities and villages where humans reside like devil fruit, so there have been no significant losses or casualties so far. On the other hand, perhaps because the devil fruit originally appeared from another world, exotic beasts do not have much resistance to the abilities of those with abilities. In addition, the vast majority of capable individuals combine strength and abilities, and in terms of weapons, they choose cold weapons rather than hot weapons. So as the appearance of exotic beasts became more and more frequent, some of the abilities included by Xing Fu became the main force in fighting against them. Of course, there are also spontaneous ones, such as Yan Xiao. However, since spontaneous individuals like Yan Xiao usually have their own city of residence, and exotic beasts are obviously not as common as cats and dogs, the main force is still those who serve Xing Fu. With the increasing frequency of the appearance of exotic beasts, coupled with the fact that capable individuals have gradually become the main force in combating them, the evaluation of capable individuals in society has gradually become more positive. 6 months after the appearance of devil fruit and the beast, an official organization under the direct jurisdiction of the United Nations, the Association of Capabilities, was established, led by the 5 permanent members and 10 non-permanent members. The most important task of this organization, in addition to those with jurisdiction, is to issue commissioned missions to suppress exotic beasts in various regions. Yan Xiao is a member of this association. At the same time, the association has also released an evaluation system that evaluates the strength of capable individuals into 6 levels. A. B, C, D, E, and F. The difference between each level is about 10 times. Yan Xiao, who was previously rated as a C-level capable individual, is considered a Jing English NPC, not many, but definitely not uncommon. After upgrading to level B, I can also make a guest appearance as a small boss to some extent. As for A-level, it can only be described as rarity, and may even be less than the number of members of the United Nations. Unlike the self-established organizations of capable individuals in various countries, the Association of Capable Individuals can be said to be quite popular. After all, even great heroes hope to receive recognition, especially from the court. And organizations like the Association of the Capable, established by the United Nations, can be recognized after joining without worrying about being mocked as the hawk dog of the court. In addition, the commission of the association is usually voluntary, so even if you haven't completed a commission after joining, you don't have to worry about being fired. The Association of the Capable has naturally become the first goal in the hearts of many capable people. Chapter 3. A-level Strength. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. But I didn't expect that you have already become a B-level ability. On the screen, Eleanor with long black hair wore a strange look on her face. The gap between B-level and C-level talents is not only in terms of strength, but also in terms of quantity. There are billions of people worldwide, and not to mention how many of them have abilities, only a few thousand or 800 can reach the B-level. In this case, the importance of level B and level C cannot be equated with Re. On the other hand, Yan Xiao was checking his own account and lazily said when he saw that the money had already been deposited into the account. There's no way, after all, only with strong strength can one make money. The commissions issued by the Ability Association are usually for hunting missions, mainly to hunt down those extraterrestrial creatures that are close to the city or reside in the wild. The former is relatively easy to say, while Yan Xiao once took on a mission to hunt down spiders that are entrenched in the mine. However, it was not until Yan Xiao arrived that he realized that the female spider had already brought out countless offspring in the mine. Although Yan Xiao successfully solved this D-level mission, Yan Xiao, who is allergic to arthropods, showed some respect for such missions afterwards. On the other hand, the rewards after completing the commission are still very generous, such as the D-level task completed by Yan Xiao. Although the difficulty increased to at least D+ level after adding a small spider in the mine, the reward was also about several $100,000. As for the newly killed Tyrannosaurus, it reached several $1 million. These rewards are provided by the member countries of the Ability Association, and it is also cost-effective for these countries to hire ability to deal with those extraterrestrial creatures. The reward for C-level missions is only a few $1 million, and the cost of a third-generation main battle tank is several $1 million. The Tyrannosaurus Rex just destroyed more than one during the battle. Excluding other losses caused by the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the damage to weapons and equipment during combat alone has reached tens of millions, let alone personnel losses and compensation. So although countries are not without the ability to solve these problems, hiring capable individuals is obviously more cost-effective. Moreover, the vast majority of commissions are only E-level, and D-level ones are not easily encountered, resulting in even fewer expenses. As for level A, from the emergence of capable individuals until now, this level of delegation has only appeared once, which was a year ago. At that time, Yan Xiao was only a C-level capable person, and the Ability Association had just begun to take shape. At that time, a giant creature about the size of a small town and resembling a crocodile turtle suddenly appeared along the coast of the U.S. capital, Washington. It can be imagined how desperate the officials in Washington were when such a monster appeared along the coast. Although it is not yet clear whether this crocodile turtle has an attacking ability, it is obvious that it must not be allowed to enter Washington. After all, if it were to be allowed in, Washington would definitely be destroyed. Besides, the appearance of this creature definitely belongs to the kind with a fierce face. However, It is not an easy task to rely on the ability association to deal with this creature. After all, the ability association had just been established at that time, and not all powerful individuals had joined the association. Moreover, the association could not quickly gather a large number of powerful individuals. So the task of defending Washington ultimately fell on the shoulders of the U.S. military, but the U.S. military, who already knew about exotic beasts, was also well aware that their high-tech weapons did not have much effect on such creatures. Therefore, the final plan formulated by the U.S. military was to send the Air Force to lead this guy to an uninhabited land near Washington, and then find a way to eliminate it. The operation was very successful, although the U.S. Air Force's air-to-ground missiles did not cause much damage to this monster, it was still successfully angered and swam towards the designated location. Although the battle was successful, the U.S. military generals couldn't laugh at all because a squadron of F.15 fighter jets sent out only returned less than half in the end. This is also something that cannot be done. Although the U.S. military's air-to-ground missiles can accurately strike targets from tens or even hundreds of kilometers away, this mission is to lure the target to the designated location. The F.15 squadron, as bait, must appear in the view of the crocodile turtle. Otherwise, who should it go to? The mission was supposed to go smoothly, and the enraged crocodile turtle did indeed change direction. However, what surprised people was that when the F.15 squadron flew towards the designated target, the crocodile turtle opened its huge mouth and spewed out a tornado-like column of air. Caught off guard, half of the team's F.15 was torn apart by the air column, and two planes unexpectedly collided. The rest also ran away in a panic. In this single battle, Americans lost at least $1 billion. After learning this lesson, Americans became much more careful when luring their targets to the designated location. Although they suffered multiple losses along the way, they ultimately succeeded in guiding them to the designated location. After successfully directing the target to the designated location, the U.S. military assembled nearly 1,000 fighter jets, bombers, and attack aircraft, along with the Army's heavy artillery and missiles. If it weren't for the distance from the designated location to the seaside, the U.S. military even had plans to reactivate several Iowa-class battleships that had been sealed off. At the same time, thousands of capable individuals from around the world also joined the siege of crocodiles. Although many countries were unhappy with the United States, they could not let such a monster enter a city with a population of several million after understanding these exotic creatures. This battle lasted for several days and nights, and the Air Force suffered the smallest losses afterwards. After all, Americans were not so brainless as in movies that they would use machine guns to fight this monster, and this monster was obviously unable to attack enemies hundreds of kilometers away. However, although the losses of the Air Force are small, the losses of the Army and capable personnel are extremely huge. Under the anger of the crocodile turtle, the Army lost nearly 70,000 people, and the capable ones who arrived also lost hundreds after excluding those who had escaped. However, there is no other way, after all, without a prominent target to hold on to hatred, the crocodile turtle would never have stayed in place and been left to be fought by the Air Force. After the war, the U.S. military was busy calculating losses, and those capable of participating in the war also received millions of dollars in compensation. Of course, the Association of Capable Men also drew a 5% intermediary fee from it. Although 5% was small, it was already a considerable amount for the United Nations, which often suffered from malicious arrears of membership fees. Every year when paying membership fees, many countries would default, especially the 5 permanent members. Among them, the United States naturally owed the most, so the intermediary fee drawn by the association greatly alleviated the tense finances of the United Nations. By the way, remember to go to the branch in Beijing when you have time. After chatting for a while, Eleanor said to Yen in a serious tone. "What are you doing there?" Seeing Naya so upright, Yen Xiao was a bit puzzled. After all, the association has a high degree of authority. Basically, as long as they don't commit any criminal offenses, those with abilities will not care about what the association wants to do. Of course it's time to replace the communicator. Eleanor turned around and searched for it, then took out a communicator that looked the same as Yan Guang's wrist armor, but had a noticeably different material. Your one is for use below level C. Now that you have reached level B, you naturally need to replace it. Is there any difference? Of course it's different. This communicator is made of titanium alloy, which is many times stronger than your ordinary alloy. The damage caused during battles will also be reduced significantly. Most importantly, after replacing the communicator, I can prioritize handling your orders in the future. Priority, aren't you specifically responsible for me? Yan Xiao felt a bit strange. After all, when he used to look for Eleanor, there had never been a situation where he needed to queue up. Nonsense, Eleanor said impatiently. With so many capable individuals, it's impossible for the association to assign a dedicated person to handle each one. But I haven't encountered any queuing situations either. Yan Xiao raised his doubts in his heart. You're so lazy, you don't even have to take on a commission for a month. Only by encountering it can you have a ghost. Hey, this explanation seems to be very convincing. After accepting this statement, Yan Xiao nodded and glanced at the communicator in Eleanor's hand. Okay, I'll take a plane to Beijing tomorrow after watching the pandas, but Yan Xiao said with a strange expression on his face. This in your hand won't be a locator. Until Yan Xiao said so, Eleanor made a gesture of wanting to hit him, because among capable people, the locator is not a good word to hear, seeking favorites, clicks, and recommended tickets. Chapter 4. Indian Events. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The three words, locator, are also quite well known among capable individuals, and this is entirely due to an incident that occurred 2 years ago when the Association of Capable Individuals was just established. 2 years ago, when the Association of Capable Persons was first established, due to its early stages, its branches in various countries needed the assistance of local authorities to operate smoothly. For this reason, various countries also have a great say in these branches. This is not a big deal at first. After all, the United Nations cannot reach the level of equality with other major countries just by relying on an association of capable individuals. However, the fact that capable individuals exist in this world is already enough to change the world order. If capable individuals launch city raids, it would be a disaster for any country. Mighty power, Legion-level destruction. It has to be said that the concern of the United States has expanded to a world-class level, and there is extreme concern for any force that is not under the control of the United States. Moreover, there are so many people in this world who don't like the United States, and not to mention anything else, the Middle East alone is a huge area. Therefore, after the establishment of the association, Zheng Fu in the United States considered monitoring those who had the ability to obstruct and threaten American interests through the association, and in fact, they did so. For Zheng Fu in the United States, the ability to monitor the world is clearly unrealistic. Therefore, the short-term goal of the United States is only to monitor those with the ability to operate domestically. So shortly after the establishment of the American branch of the Association of Capable People, a tool called communicator was distributed to those who joined the association. Of course, the American government was also very clear about the consequences if this incident were exposed. However, monitoring the prospects of all capable individuals in the United States ultimately convinced the top management of the U.S. government. And the Federal Bureau of Investigation responsible for this matter is also very confident. After all, the backdoor programs they left in the communicator were designed by first-class hackers within the Bureau, so there is no need to worry about any accidents. Well, if all the top hackers were recruited by the U.S. government, perhaps it would be so. The U.S. hacker force is indeed the strongest in the world, but fortunately not every top-notch hacker serves the U.S., especially those who have become capable individuals. Coincidentally, there was such a top hacker who, after becoming a capable individual, had the habit of being a hacker in the past. He conducted an inspection of the communicator sent by the U.S. branch and then discovered the backdoor program in the communicator. After the incident spread, American capable individuals naturally became furious. On the day of the incident, the headquarters of the Federal Bureau of Investigation was completely dismantled by hundreds of capable individuals. The director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation himself was even dragged to the road by those capable individuals and pulled with a belt. Even the American *** teams that came to suppress them were repeatedly repelled by these capable individuals. And perhaps someone was behind the scenes, with more and more capable individuals heading to Washington. The final city-wide chaos was finally triggered. The area within a radius of 5 kilometers around the Federal Bureau of Investigation has been almost completely destroyed by capable individuals and the U.S. military who came to suppress it. Fortunately, not everyone becomes a killer after becoming capable, so civilian casualties are not significant. After the U.S. government issued a pardon, declared those capable of causing trouble innocent, and punished several scapegoats, the incident finally came to an end. For Zheng Fu in the United States, this is undoubtedly an extremely humiliating thing, but if we want to suppress those who are capable, we must have the determination to turn the entire Washington into ruins. Such determination is undoubtedly difficult to make, so in the end, the President of the United States can only accept the advisor's proposal to issue an amnesty order. Afterwards, the U.S. government naturally became a laughingstock, and the opposition took advantage of this opportunity to heavily criticize, ultimately leading to the U.S. President having to step down early, and the meme of the communicator spread worldwide. However, thanks to this incident, although similar communicators were eventually promoted globally, such incidents never happened again. On the plane, Yan Xiao was looking at the panda photo he had just taken in the wildlife reserve. Regardless of the era, endangered animals like pandas are strictly protected, but for capable individuals like Yan Xiao, that protection is nothing at all. Therefore, it was easy for Yan Xiao to obtain many exclusive photos within the protected area. It's not a worthwhile trip, but I don't know if anyone else will be as leisurely as me. The answer, of course, is definitely not, but Yan Xiao wouldn't care about these things either. After all, he has become comfortable and used to it, as can be seen from his commission only once a month. For him, it's good to spend enough money, and there's no need to take on commissions for the sake of money. Moreover, due to the frequent errors in intelligence by the intelligence department, any level of commission usually carries unpredictable risks. However, it is precisely because of Yan Xiao's lazy personality that although he possesses a powerful, thunderbolt fruit, his own strength is only at the level of B. level. It should be noted that at least 1/3 of those 10A. level abilities are from natural fruits. However, what Yan Xiao didn't know was that while he was still on the plane looking at the photos he had taken, a big event happened in distant India. India, a peculiar country, although dubbed the largest Minju country by the President of the United States, is almost always experiencing non-Minju events in this country. The caste system, honor murder, devadasi, and even the bride who was maliciously burned by her husband's family due to insufficient dowry. Of course, there are also commendable aspects to India, such as how well the Indian people have preserved their own culture. Although most of India's culture is of a terrible kind. Many people know that New Delhi, the capital of India, has had 8 cities in its history. The earliest history can be traced back to the Peacock dynasty, and later the Sultanate of Delhi used it as its capital. During the reign of Shah Jahan in the Mughal Empire, 1592.1666, the surviving Old City of Delhi, 1639, also known as the 7th City of Delhi, was built, which was then known as Shah Jahanabad. During the British colonial period, Kolkata was once the capital, and Old Delhi was elected as the capital of British India in the early 20th century and underwent reconstruction. After the end of World War II, India attached great importance to protecting its cultural heritage and fine traditions. In order to preserve the historic city of Delhi, which is full of cultural relics and historical sites, India preserved the entire city and built a new capital southwest of Delhi. Such foresight is truly admirable, as they have fully preserved an ancient capital, and Delhi new city naturally became the 8th city of Delhi, while New Delhi became the new capital of the post-Indian Republic. Of course, what happened in India at this time has nothing to do with Delhi, but it is related to India's sacred river, the Ganges. If floating corpses float every day and at least 1.5 million people excrete the Ganges almost every day, then it can be called a sacred river in Patna, the capital of Bihar, India. Local Indians continue to wash themselves in the Ganges River, even if there is a person defecating more than 10 meters away. And a floating corpse floating in the water more than 10 meters away, perhaps it's due to religious reasons, or it could be due to racial differences. Although India, which has 170 million hectares of arable land, compared to 121 million hectares in China, almost half of its children suffer from malnutrition, which is even more than the whole of Africa, the Indian people living here are still quite optimistic. These Indians who wash and even swim near the Ganges River did not notice that on the roof of a building not far away, two people wearing black SE cloaks were coldly staring at this place. What kind of creature is this? It can wash up in such a dirty river as if nothing had happened. Looking at the Indians playing in the river, one of them said in disbelief. Yeah. The other person also nodded. Hilgai, I'm starting to doubt whether our virus is effective against them now. Actually, I'm also skeptical like this. After a light cough, the black-clad man named Hilgai continued. Anyway, we just need to obey your Majesty's orders, North. Are you better at spreading the plague, or are you here? Upon hearing Hilgai's words, another black-clad man named North nodded. Since that's the case, let's start. As he spoke, a leather bag had already appeared in North's hand. North only opened a small opening in the bag, and a clump of grey powder had already fallen into the nearby Ganges River with the wind. At this moment, those people in the river were still unaware. After confirming that all the powder in his pocket had been poured out, Northmore stood on the top floor of the building, reciting something. Although he once said he would go to the association after getting off the plane, Yan Xiao first played for a few days before going. Therefore, when Yan Xiao arrived at the association, he not only saw Eleanor dressed in OL, but also saw the messy hall. What happened? It can't be that the Third World War has finally started. If it were in Pingree, hearing such a joke from Yan Xiao, Eleanor would definitely give him a white eye, but now Eleanor is just saying it seriously. It's not war, it's India. Seeking recommendation, seeking collection. Chapter 5. The Resident Evil in India. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It's not strange for a white person like Eleanor to be here, after all, it's already an era of internationalization. However, more importantly, the United Nations is an international organization, so in order to reduce the influence of various countries on local associations and branches, it is important to insert some members from other countries. Fortunately, there are not very few people learning Chinese nowadays, so in order to reduce the influence of the Chinese government on the Chinese branch, many people like Eleanor have been sent over. Of course, whether these people are serving other countries is really unknown. India. When hasn't anything happened in that place before? Upon hearing Eleanor say so, Yan Xiao seemed somewhat indifferent. It should be noted that India experiences several religious conflicts almost every year, and terrorist attacks are even more common after the emergence of capable individuals. Even the Bhopal incident, which claimed to be the largest industrial disaster in history and caused hundreds of thousands of casualties, occurred in India. It was a more terrifying industrial disaster than Chernobyl in Ukraine and Minamata disease in Ribbon. But soon Yan Xiao realized it. No, if there were a terrorist attack, you wouldn't be so nervous, would it be difficult? Yan Xiao's forehead also broke into a cold sweat as he spoke. Is it possible that another A-level monster has emerged? Although Yan Xiao did not participate in the Battle of Washington back then, there was a lot of information afterwards. The tragic situation at that time is definitely fresh in Yan Xiao's memory. Therefore, although Yan Xiao has reached the level of B-level now, he still cannot guarantee that he will survive from that battle. At that time, more than 10 B-level soldiers died, not to mention those who were injured. It's not an A-level monster, but it's not much different. Eleanor tugged at Yan Xiao's clothes. You come with me first. Speaking, Eleanor pulled Yan Xiao to a screen in the hall, where a female journalist was broadcasting events that had occurred in India, and a circle of capable individuals and association staff had already been gathered in front of the screen. You have seen that due to an unknown virus, the capital city of Bihar, India, Patna, is completely in chaos. Standing on the rooftop of a building, the reporter said to the camera. Following the reporter's signal, the cameraman aimed the camera at the street below. At this moment, gunshots were already blazing down the street below, and countless streams of people were roaring and rushing towards the end of the street. At the end of the street, hundreds of Jing inspectors and soldiers were also constantly using weapons to strike. Although the weapons in the hands of Jing Cha and the soldiers are effective against infected individuals with gray skin, those infected individuals do not care about any holes or other issues on their bodies. Moreover, after being infected, these infected individuals have undergone many changes compared to before. Apart from the appearance of their skin, the biggest change is that their strength is much stronger than before. The camera even captured several infected individuals tearing apart a Hindustan ambassador who was blocking the way. This is a type of car that has been produced in India since 1948, commonly referred to as the N-by car by Indians. This type of car has a considerable popularity in India and is still in production today. By the way, some of these inspectors are even using the Linfield rifle, which was a weapon used by the British during World War I. It is curious that these rifles, which have a history of over 100 years, can still be used today, but what Yan Xiao is more curious about now is what happened in India. What exactly happened? Just as you can see, an unknown virus suddenly began to spread in Bihar not long ago. People who suffer from this virus will have gray skin like those in the news, and their strength will be infinite. Most importantly, their attacks will also become very strong, almost to the point where they will attack people when they see them. This. Yan Xiao frowned when he heard Eleanor say so. Isn't this becoming similar to zombie movies? Although Yan Xiao is also a fan of the Resident Evil and Survival series, he is also aware of how bad things that happen in the game will become if they are transferred to reality. However, the worst thing is that this happened in India. It should be noted that in recent years, India's population has surpassed that of China, becoming truly the most populous country. Leaving aside how happy India, which has always regarded China as a competitor, is after becoming the most populous country, such a thing would definitely be a disaster in India. Of course, if it were to happen in Siberia or Australia, not many people would be worried. Don't worry, things haven't gotten so bad yet. Those infected people don't have the ability to spread, at least those who were attacked by them haven't had any abnormal situations, so the Indian side believes it may be another way of transmission. Eleanor smiled bitterly as she said so. If it were like in a zombie movie, this place wouldn't just be chaotic now. Upon hearing Eleanor say so, Yan Xiao felt relieved. At this moment, something unusual seemed to be happening on the screen, and more than 10 infected individuals seemed to have spotted reporters and photographers, roaring and rushing towards them. Faced with more than 10 infected individuals who can smash cars with their bare hands, journalists and cameramen naturally cannot remain indifferent, screaming and constantly retreating. As the journalist and cameraman were about to die, an Indian man carrying a single knife suddenly appeared in front of the camera and solved these infected individuals in just a few seconds. Seeing the crisis resolved, Yan Xiao and others in front of the screen also breathed a sigh of relief. A few minutes later, Eleanor took Yan Xiao to his office, but just as Eleanor was replacing Yan Xiao's communicator, a loud noise suddenly came from the computer on the desk. After gesturing for Yan Xiao to explore for himself, Eleanor opened the computer. What's wrong? Wearing the communicator on his wrist, Yan Xiao noticed that Eleanor's face seemed to change. It seems that India cannot withstand it anymore. Now, Zhengfu in India is issuing a commission through the association to hire capable individuals to help. Can't withstand it. Just now I saw in the news that conventional weapons seem to be effective against those infected, and not long ago, Indians just purchased 10 T.50s and a large number of weapons from Russians. Why can't they withstand it so quickly? You also know that although India has a large army, its infrastructure is too poor, coupled with Indians' procrastination in handling affairs, it is estimated that the yellow cauliflower will be cold when the troops are transported over. What is the commission offered by Indians? 1 million. 1 million. Yen Xiao frowned. Are they all 1 million? Because it's not clear why this happened yet, India's Xing Fu is only planning to hire some capable individuals to help in Patna, so the commission is not very high. Speaking, Eleanor looked up at Yen Xiao. What? Interested? Forget it. Yen Xiao shook his head. I just finished a ticket, so I'll take a break first. Although Yen Xiao is also curious about this matter, he still refuses to go to India for the sake of 1 million yuan. Upon hearing Yen Xiao's words, Eleanor just smiled and remained silent. Although the situation may seem serious, the scope is limited to Patna, and with the troops being mobilized, Eleanor believes that this incident will not go beyond control. However, Eleanor clearly overestimated India's situation and, of course, underestimated the severity of this incident. A week later, just as Yen Xiao was about to leave, the communicator, like his wrist armor, rang. There's a situation in India. After opening the communicator, before Yen Xiao could say anything, Eleanor on the other side had already spoken. What's going on? Yen Xiao felt a bit strange. Didn't the news say it had already stabilized? Although Yen Xiao did not travel to India like other capable individuals due to the low compensation given by Indians, he also paid close attention to news from the Indian side. Not long ago, the Indian side also released a message saying that the matter was almost resolved. No wonder Yen Xiao asked so. You should know that the spokesperson for India's Xing Fu in the news said that he has a nose and eyes, which is very convincing. Those are all meant to appease the people, but in reality, the situation in India is almost uncontrollable. When she said that, Eleanor's face also looked a bit ugly. The Indian army hasn't arrived yet. It's useless even when it arrives, the infected area has expanded. How big? Yen Xiao was surprised. After all, with India's population, even if the infected area expands slightly, it is very likely to add several million more infected people. However, Eleanor did not answer Yen Xiao's question, but instead asked a rhetorical question. Do you know how the virus spreads? I don't know. Do you know which river it is through? Before Yen Xiao could answer this time, Eleanor had already solved the mystery by herself. The Ganges. Yen Xiao also has some understanding of India, naturally understanding what the Ganges River represents for India. The Ganges River Basin is the most populous river basin in the world, with over 300 million people living in the Ganges Delta alone and 400 million on the other side of the Ganges River Basin. In India, the majority of Hindu believers have 4 great pleasures throughout their lives. Admiring the god of Shiva, bathing and drinking the holy water of the Ganges, making friends with saints, and living in the holy city of Varanasi. Leaving aside these 4 hobbies, bathing and drinking in the Ganges River alone are already deadly. Reports have shown that 80% of diseases in India and 1/3 of deaths are related to waterborne diseases. But now a troublesome virus is spreading in the Ganges River, and one can imagine how bad the situation in India will be now. Although Yen Xiao usually watches disasters that occur abroad with a theatrical mindset, and sometimes he can't help but gloat, if it's a disaster involving hundreds of millions of people, since that's the case, shouldn't the truth be revealed more? And then? Eleanor asked in reverse. The ones that should be infected have all been infected. Is there any other purpose besides causing panic when it is announced now? Besides, India's government does not have the ability to relocate hundreds of millions of people. Even if Indians usually travel by train, it is impossible. It would be better to block the epidemic area and evacuate the people around it like now. Not only that, some of the infected individuals have even mutated, and the Indian Army incapable individuals in Bihar have suffered several setbacks. The situation there has become quite bad. Did the Indians come up with any solutions? The United Nations intends to ask several powerful countries around India to send troops to help, but India's government has refused. Now, while mobilizing troops for blockade, India's government has also offered a higher price to hire strong capable individuals. Upon hearing this, Yan Shao already understood the intention of Eleanor to contact him. I'll go. Seeking collections and recommended tickets. Chapter 6. Youjia. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Inside the mansion, a high school girl dressed in a sailor suit is sitting cross over the owner of the mansion, passionately kissing. If someone who is not aware of this scene sees it, they may think that some wealthy person is holding on to the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 children he has taken care of, preparing to do something beneficial to their physical and mental health. However, if you observe carefully, you will find that the middle-aged man who was passionately kissing the girl is showing a frightened expression on his face. And around the bed, several bodyguards responsible for protecting middle-aged people also fell to the ground, unaware of life or death. Youjia, why haven't you killed him yet? Just as the young girl and middle-aged man were lying on the bed kissing passionately, a blond man wearing a black SE windbreaker suddenly appeared by the bed. Upon hearing the man's words, the girl mischievously blinked at the middle-aged man and then gently breathed a breath into his mouth. Almost in an instant, the middle-aged man who was just kissing the girl had already melted down like a mud figure in water, and he couldn't even let out a scream. Why are you in such a hurry? I want to play a little longer, Beirut. The girl who spoke called Youjia got up and wiped the corners of her mouth. Stop playing, said the blond man named Beirut, feeling a bit helpless. Just received a message from Giselle asking us to go to India. India. Youjia is a bit strange. What are you doing in India? I heard that India is infecting a very serious virus, and now thousands of capable people around the world are rushing towards India. Giselle hopes that we can take this opportunity to absorb more. Alright, Youjia waved her hand impatiently. When will we depart then? Immediately. Upon hearing Beirut's words, Youjia picked up his coat from the bedside, and at that moment, a sound of footsteps suddenly came from outside. It seems that those idiots finally realized something was wrong. When she said that, Youjia laughed like a cat stealing fish. You go first, let me handle this here. Watching Youjia, Beirut shook his head helplessly. Okay, I'll leave this to you. Putting on his coat, Youjia jumped out of the window after giving Beirut a kiss. More than 10 seconds later, more than 10 bodyguards with guns burst in from outside. Seeing the scene inside the room, especially the beach of something unknown on the bed, more than a dozen bodyguards were all stunned. At this moment, Beirut gently waved his hand upwards, and more than 10 blood spikes suddenly burst out from the bodies of the bodyguards who were originally lying on the ground, piercing their bodies before they had time to dodge. Is India. Just as the middle-aged man was melting, Yan Shao was sitting on a military plane flying to India. Apart from some soldiers, there were also capable individuals who had just received commissions on the same plane as him. Due to the urgency of this matter and the uncertainty of the availability of flights for civil aviation, India has specially allowed military transport planes from other countries to directly arrive within its borders. For Yan Shao, it doesn't matter whether he arrives in India early or late. The most important thing is not to let himself walk to India with his feet. That's right, based solely on physical fitness, Yan Shao has indeed surpassed the average person, but after all, he has not yet reached the point of breaking through the sound barrier. Not without such a person, it's just not Yan Shao. If Yan Shao runs recklessly, he can reach a speed of about 300 km per hour, but he can't hold on for much time, so it's not as comfortable as taking a plane. But I didn't expect that there were quite a few people coming this time. At first glance, there were at least 20 people sitting in the cabin. Although they were all C.level and D.level capable individuals, all of them combined were a considerable force. Originally, the journey was lonely, and Yan Xiao wanted to find someone to chat with. However, at least half of the people in the cabin pretended to be experts and acted cool, while the rest were busy with their own affairs. Yan Xiao didn't want his face to be hot and his buttocks to be cold, so he had to turn on the communicator and play a small game or something. It took about 4 to 5 hours to fly directly from Beijing to New Delhi. When Yan Xiao and his delegation left the airport, they found soldiers everywhere outside, and New Delhi was already under martial law. It seems that the situation is very serious. Looking at the few simple fortifications not far from the airport exit, Yan Xiao said with some seriousness. New Delhi is the capital of India, and the capital has become like this, let alone the states where the virus is spreading. Not only Yan Xiao, but also the other people who boarded the plane with him became serious. Many times, due to sudden incidents, it is impossible for capable individuals to arrive at the scene as soon as they are entrusted, and those who arrive at the scene are usually stationed troops in nearby areas. So the vast majority of capable individuals have experience in cooperating with the military in combat. Of course, there are also some who have experience in fighting with the military. After all, no matter when it is illegal, money comes faster than the right way. Yan Xiao himself has taken on such commissions. It seems that this commission may not be as easy as I told them. Standing at the exit, a skilled young man wearing glasses said. At that moment, several Indian officers and 2 Chinese people walked over. Are you capable people from China? Please come with us. Speaking, the few Indians got on a bus. Yan Xiao and others looked at each other and also got into the car together. After getting on the bus, one of the Indian officers muttered to them, and Yan Xiao asked the people next to him. They said it was in English, but Yan Xiao couldn't even hear it. Fortunately, at this moment, those 2 Chinese people spoke up. Mr. Yalik said that there have been cases of infection in Bihar and several other states, even Bangladesh, and the situation is very urgent now. Therefore, they hope that you can immediately set off to the epidemic area. Yan Xiao and the others looked at each other, because they had some understanding of the situation in India before coming, so they did not object. Seeing that Yan Xiao and the others did not object, the originally ugly faces of the Indian officers improved a bit, and then they muttered to them again. After listening attentively for a while, one of the translators spoke to Yan Xiao and the others. Yalan Ku said that he is sorry for not being able to give you a break before rushing to the epidemic area, but I believe you can understand the current situation. Next, you will take a plane to Kolkata. As the airport in Kolkata has already fallen, you will undergo a brief airborne training and then arrive in Kolkata by airborne means. Kolkata. Many times, things need to be done in order, but of course, it is more important to distinguish the importance. It is obvious that for Indians, as the 3rd largest metropolitan area in India, after Mumbai and Delhi, and the 4th largest city in India, Kolkata is definitely much more important than Bihar. During the colonial period, from 1772 to 1911, Kolkata remained the capital of British India for 140 years. Now that Kolkata has almost fallen, Indians can only temporarily abandon Bihar. Although it may seem like a wise decision to others, it is still an inexplicable reason to go. So many people in the car have strange faces. However, this is ultimately the Indians' own business, and Yan Xiao and others are only hired mercenaries. In the end, they can only prepare for parachute training with their mouths closed. Although they are capable, if they jump from a height of several thousand meters, even capable individuals can turn into meat sauce, and of course, there are also those who can remain intact. It's just that no one present can achieve this level. Due to the urgency of time, the parachute training provided by Yan Xiao and others was very concise, mainly focusing on how to parachute and the timing of opening the parachute. As for landing, there is no need to talk about it. Even if someone like Yan Xiao jumps directly from 100 meters high, it is not a problem. Ordinary people can reach a height of more than 10 meters, and the most important landing training for normal people is actually the simplest for them. Yan Xiao and others made rapid progress and basically graduated on the same day of study. However, the Indians seemed to move faster than them. Yan Xiao and his team had just graduated, and the Indians had already loaded them into a car and pulled them to the airport. And according to the Indians, the first few waves seemed to follow the same process. How is the situation in Kolkata now? Although Yan Xiao did not believe that ordinary infected individuals could threaten him, he still asked carefully in the car. After hearing the question, the translator surnamed Lu glanced at him. The situation is very bad. Most of the urban areas in Kolkata, as well as the airport and train station, have already been occupied. Now, only a small part of the urban area is left, and the most important bridges are still in the hands of Zhengfu in India. The Indian Army is currently evacuating refugees to a safe place. In addition to clearing infected individuals, your mission this time is to help the station troops defend the most important bridges. Clear it. Can we just kill the assassin directly? Although almost everyone knew that these people might not be able to recover, Yan Xiao and his team were still surprised when they heard the order from the Indian government to clear them. Lu did not directly answer their questions, but simply explained two facts. India's Zhengfu currently does not have the ability to treat them, nor do they have enough manpower to help them recover. As the fourth largest city in India, Kolkata has a population of approximately 8 million, 7.78 million in 2008. Although it is not possible for everyone to be infected, even 1.1 care would require millions of people. Moreover, the residents of Kolkata have become immensely powerful after being infected, and some of them have mutated to the point of being able to smash tanks with their bare hands. Treating them to restore them to normal is itself a delusion, therefore, humanitarian destruction of them is clearly the only option for India's government. Since that's the case, then we understand. Seeking collection and recommended tickets. Chapter 7. Variants. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ladies and gentlemen, now is Kolkata. On EP1-17 transport plane, an Indian officer stood in the cockpit and spoke to dozens of capable individuals around him. Due to the fact that parachute descent is different from other transportation methods, there may be some deviation during landing. During landing, it is very likely that you will fall into the epidemic area due to wind direction and other reasons. If this situation occurs, you need to use the GPS on the communicator to reach the defense line of the quarantine area. Parachute is a modern form of combat unit assembly that utilizes parachutes or powered parachutes to carry out landing. It is a combat unit, soldiers, weapons and equipment, logistic supplies, etc., that operates at an altitude of several thousand meters, take a transport plane or specialized aircraft and parachute to the designated combat area. Parachute can be divided into tactical and strategic parachutes. From the height of parachute, it can be divided into high altitude, above 2,500 meters, parachute and low altitude, below 2,500 meters, parachute. With the development of air transportation, there have been ultra-low altitude, below 1,000 meters, parachutes in recent years. It is generally believed that the parachute height is directly proportional to the parachute force. The lower the parachute height, the higher the parachute force, and it is often easier to gather troops and quickly form combat effectiveness in a short period of time. Although the current situation in Kolkata is very dangerous, it is not a battlefield after all. The Indian Air Force's transport planes do not need to worry about air defense firepower on the ground, so even if they slowly drift down from high altitude, it is not a problem. In addition, Yan Xiao and others are newly graduated beginners, and India has set them an altitude of 2,500 meters. Although it is safe at this height, the precision will also be very poor. At least by the time they land on the ground, they may not know where they have drifted due to the wind direction. Seeing that these capable individuals from all over the world present had no objections, the officer nodded. Since that's the case, I'm here to wish everyone a smooth journey. As soon as the officer finished speaking, the tail compartment of C.17 had slowly opened. The C.17 combines strategic and tactical air transport capabilities and is known as the Global Overlord. It is the only transport aircraft in the world that can simultaneously adapt to strategic and tactical tasks. In 2011, India's Zhengfu approved the purchase of 10 C.17s from the United States for $4.1 billion. However, these transport planes never served India in actual combat after they arrived, and it was unexpected that they would serve Yan Xiao and his team for the first time they participated in actual combat. After the tailgate was opened, dozens of people inside quickly lined up. Due to Yan Xiao being the strongest among them, he was the first to jump down. Speaking of which, this is still my first time parachuting. When Yan Xiao jumped out of the cabin, he felt the huge wind rushing towards him, and Yan Xiao thought to himself. Although Yan Xiao has also completed many commissions in the past 3 years, some of which were even completed with the military, it is indeed his first time doing things like parachuting. After confirming that the transport plane was far enough away, Yan Xiaola opened the parachute. Soon, a white mushroom appeared in the sky, and not long after, the people behind also opened the parachute one by one. Originally, the matter of parachute landing needed to consider the weather, but due to the critical situation in Kolkata, the Indian side could not worry much anymore. Basically, as long as the weather allowed transport planes to operate, it was enough. After jumping off the transport plane and not yet floating in the air for a long time, Yan Xiao knew that his luck was not very good, because at this moment, under his feet was the burning fourth largest city in India, Kolkata. And even at a height of several hundred meters, one could hear roars and gunshots coming from the place. Yan Xiao could even see the bridge several kilometers away and the defenders stationed on the bridge. Damn it! At a distance of 100 meters from the ground, Yan Xiao already realized that he had landed in an epidemic area. Because at this moment, the streets on the ground are densely packed with infected individuals, and these infected individuals seem to have noticed the whereabouts of Yan Xiao and others. They are now looking up at them and roaring. Although Yan Xiao had already been promoted to be .level ability at this time, and was considered a rare skilled player even in the world, he still felt a tingling sensation as he looked at the scene on the ground. It's not surprising, after all, Yan Xiao was just an ordinary person 3 years ago. Although Yan Xiao has experienced many things in the past 3 years, what is happening now is unprecedented. As he was about to fall on the street, Yan Xiao used his abilities to create a small explosion on his side, and then used the power of the explosion to float himself to the roof of a nearby tall building. Finally there's no need to fall directly into them. After cutting off the rope of the parachute, Yan Xiao also breathed a sigh of relief. After tidying up his belongings, Yan Xiao pulled out a nearly 1 meter long mountain opener, with black blades and handles. It's not that Yan Xiao's combat power is stronger when using the sword, at least he will never be stronger than his own abilities. In fact, both martial arts and weapons were only learned by Yan Xiao after he gained abilities, and they were all just superficial, just to better utilize his abilities when executing the commission. Now taking out the knife is mainly to preserve energy, so as not to feel weak when actually using it. Although Yan Xiao's ability has strong attack power, it cannot be used infinitely. Currently, there are at least several million infected people in Kolkata, and even if it is only 1/10, Yan Xiao's ability alone may not be enough to handle it. Therefore, before leaving, Yan Xiao brought a mountain knife. Yan Xiao's *** ability has almost reached the point of being able to smash tanks with bare hands. With this mountain opener, even without using his ability, he can still perform 7 in and 7 out below. By the way, this knife is a special product specifically designed for the use of capable individuals. It was purchased by Yan Xiao for $10,000 from the Capable Association. Although it is a mass-produced version that every capable individual can use, it is still much stronger than those on the market. At least there is no need to worry about it breaking down when used. Just as Yan Xiao had packed his personal belongings and opened his GPS, the door on the rooftop was suddenly knocked open by someone. Immediately after, Yan Xiao saw more than 10 infected individuals with gray skin, staring at him with their red eyes. In those crimson eyes, filled with jealousy towards the living Ah. After a few seconds of silence, more than 10 infected individuals roared towards Yan Xiao. As it was his first encounter with infected individuals, although he was aware that these individuals were not his opponents, Yan Xiao still exerted all his strength. After all, being careful can make a ship last for thousands of years. Yan Xiao has seen many examples of ships capsizing due to neglecting the enemy's carelessness in recent years. The first blow was to cut off an infected person from the waist. 10 minutes later, Yan Xiao walked from the rooftop to the 3rd floor and glanced downstairs. How do we get there? We can't go all the way to the bridge. At this time, the streets are densely packed with at least a few thousand infected individuals, and even with their abilities, it takes a lot of effort to deal with them. Just now, when dealing with those infected individuals, Yan Xiao had already found that although their strength was not very good, they almost reached the level of F after infection. According to the intelligence of the Indian Army, some mutated infected individuals can even reach the level of C. level, let alone D. level and E. level. Want to kill all the way out from here. Yan Xiao is afraid that before they die much, he has already been consumed alive. Fortunately, the Indian Army's defense line is only a few kilometers away from here. After taking a glance at the GPS on the communicator and determining the direction, Yan Xiao opened a nearby window and jumped directly from the window edge onto the opposite building more than 10 meters away. It's better to go up there, at least there can be fewer obstacles. Although the streets are now filled with infected individuals, there are very few infected individuals inside some buildings, especially on rooftops and other locations. Therefore, Yan Xiao's journey was smooth and he even saw other capable individuals on a few occasions. It just seems that they are not as relaxed as Yan Xiao. It's not surprising, although even the average Jing Cha at level F may not be able to handle it, they are much stronger than ordinary people. Moreover, these infected individuals rely on their own strength, unlike Yan Xiao, who mostly rely on the ability of fruits. In addition, they are fearless and must have their heads chopped off to complete the calculation. Most of these are level E and level D, and only a few companions at level C naturally find it difficult to deal with. Besides, there are also a small number of mutated infected individuals mixed in. Good luck to you all. There was no intention of coming forward to help. After bowing to a companion who was being chased by dozens of infected individuals, Yan Xiao changed direction. In the past, Yan Xiao was once dragged down by his pig teammates, so now Yan Xiao prefers to act alone, so there is no need to worry about being sold by his teammates during the action, and it is also more convenient to act. Not long after changing direction, Yan Xiao suddenly stopped and quickly took 2 steps back. In the blink of an eye, a hole 2 or 3 meters wide appeared in the position where he was originally standing, and then a large block over 3 meters high jumped out of the hole. Variance. As Yan Xiao looked at the guy who suddenly appeared in front of him, he placed his knife horizontally in front of him and whispered softly. The large head that suddenly appeared in front of Yan Xiao was 3 or 4 meters tall. If it weren't for its gray skin all over, it might even be mistaken for a relative of the green giant. And now, this big guy is staring at Yan Xiao with his red eyes, just like those infected people who were just solved by him not long ago. Ah! Just as Yan Xiao was still confronting the sudden appearance of the mutant, the guy who had just been seen dead by Yan Xiao seemed to have been ambushed and was actually caught by another big guy. After a brief scream, the capable person was torn in half. Surprisingly, there is still an ambush. It doesn't seem like a simple infection. Noticing that the big guy who had torn him apart was rushing here, Yan Xiao began to find this matter a bit interesting, seeking collections and recommended tickets. Chapter 8. Sahal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sleeping slot. After climbing out of the big hole he bumped into, Yan Shao cursed in secret. In front of him stood more than 10 mutated infected individuals who were tall, thin, short and fat. In the end, he was still careless, but what was careless was not the opponent's strength, but the place he was currently in. Just after a little probing, Yan Shao found that those two variants were only at the level of C at most and were not his opponents at all. Therefore, after a little probing, the assassin was painfully killed. However, the opponent had already reached level C, and although they were one level lower than him, it was not something that could be solved urgently. But he wasn't in a hurry either. After all, there was a gap between them. However, he seemed to have forgotten one thing, which is that Kolkata is no longer the fourth largest city in India with millions of people, but a paradise for infected people. In addition, after being infected, although these guys can still move, they are no longer living creatures. Although the last Tyrannosaurus Rex reached C+, it was still a living thing, so as long as it was matured to 5, it was enough. However, these things in front of us had to be matured to at least 8 before we could kill them. To give the other person a mature appearance, Yan Shao needs to accumulate energy for at least some time. However, neither of these two targets on the opposite side are stationary targets, so Yan Shao was unable to take them down in an instant. Fortunately, the gap between them is still there. Although Yan Shao mainly focuses on abilities, his strength on *** is not inferior to those who look similar to the Green Giant. So in just about half a minute, Yan Shao had already turned one of them into a dark roasted meat. However, just as Yan Shao was planning to solve the other one, nearly 30 mutated infected individuals surrounded him. It's not surprising, after all, Kolkata has now become the stronghold of infected individuals, and it's not surprising to have thousands of variants among millions of infected individuals. However, this not strange thing has caused Yan Shao great losses. Nearly 30 variants, although present at various levels, add up to a significant force, and even Yan Shao struggled to solve them. After a fierce battle, Yan Shao finally eliminated more than 10, but there were still more than 10 left behind, and Yan Shao himself suffered some minor injuries. Should we withdraw now? After rubbing his arms, Yan Shao thought to himself. Although Yan Shao can easily solve the dozen or so variants in front of him, no one knows how many variants still exist in Kolkata. If there were 10 or 20 more C-level mutants, even Yan Shao himself would kneel here. Therefore, after suffering some minor injuries, Yan Shao also had a desire to move forward in his heart. However, Yan Shao overthought this point. Although there are currently millions of infected individuals in Kolkata, the spread of the virus has only been more than 10 days. Although some kind of artificial acceleration quickly led to the emergence of variants among the millions of infected individuals, it was still human-made rather than naturally generated. Therefore, at this time, there were only over 1,000 variants in Kolkata city, and only a dozen had reached level C. At least half of them had already knelt here. In fact, if there were really thousands of variants, Indians would not be able to persist until now. However, as artificially processed products, their strength can only reach this level, which is the difference between artificial variants and naturally generated variants. However, this is also a matter of helplessness. After all, without mutants as the backbone, even if there are tens or even billions of infected individuals, it is not impossible to eliminate them. Although these Yan Shaos in front of him were not insurmountable, another 20 or 30 Yan Shaos would be enough. Therefore, after a moment of silence, Yan Shao came up with the idea of strategic transfer. However, just as Yan Shao was about to withdraw, a burst of alcohol suddenly came through. To the right. Although he didn't understand who the voice was, in this place, the ones who could speak were mostly friendly troops. Therefore, after reacting, Yan Shao quickly dodged towards the right side. At this moment, before the mutants could react, the ground on the rooftop suddenly shook, and then a circular giant hole with a diameter of 20.30 meters appeared at the feet of those mutants. Ah! As they fell into the giant hole, the mutants let out unwilling roars. At this moment, a middle-aged man with a big beard appeared in front of Yan Xiao. "Let's go." As he spoke, the middle-aged man rushed towards the direction of the Indian Army's defense line, and Yan Xiao quickly followed from behind. Just as the two of them crossed the street, roars came from behind them again. Immediately after, Yan Xiao and his companions saw that the mutants that had just fallen into the huge hole had already emerged, and they were chasing after them along with more than 10 mutants that had emerged from somewhere. "MD, I didn't expect those guys to keep chasing me." Speaking, Big Beard glanced at Yan Xiao. "But you're also quite fierce, you fought against them for so long. You're not bad either." Yan Xiao also had a good impression of the person who helped him a lot. "Very good ability." "That's nature," Big Beard also smiled. "My name is Sahal, a South African, and you?" "Yan Xiao, Chinese." In the process of strategic transfer, Yan Xiao had already realized that Sahal's strength was not as good as his own, as can be seen from Sahal's speed reaching its limit while he still had plenty of spare energy. However, although Sahal has not yet reached level B, I believe he has already achieved much. Next, go to the Indian side. Of course. Sahal nodded. This city is really dangerous now, with mutants like the one we just saw everywhere. Many of the talented individuals who were unlucky enough to parachute to Kolkata have already died in their hands. Saying this, Sahal glanced at Yan Xiao. "Which batch are you in?" Although Sahar's questions were somewhat vague, Yan Xiao understood what he was asking. Due to the tight situation on the Indian side this time, as long as capable individuals from other countries arrive, they will be airborne by the Indian military after receiving parachute training. When Yan Xiaolai arrived, he was already the third batch of capable individuals to arrive in Kolkata. "I'm in the third batch, and you?" "I am the second batch, probably 2 hours earlier than you." Saying this, Sahal glanced again at the mutants behind him that had been thrown far away. "I don't know what's going on with these bastards either." Obviously, in the 2 hours he arrived earlier than Yan Xiao, Sahal was thoroughly cleaned up by these mutants, as can be seen from his disheveled appearance. Although infected individuals were everywhere in the city, and several variants occasionally appeared, at the speed of Yan Xiao and Sahal, they quickly reached the blockade line formed by the Indian Army. On the way of strategic transformation, Yan Xiao and Sahal also encountered several unlucky people like them who were blown into the city by the wind. As they were about to reach the blockade line of the Indian Army, Yan Xiao and others did not rush in directly. After all, there were gunfire and bullets everywhere now, and it would not be good if they were mistakenly injured by the enemy. Those extraterrestrial creatures have strong resistance to modern weapons due to factors such as plane rules. Yan Xiao and others are different. Although they have tasted the fruits of the extraterrestrial world and obtained special abilities that are only possessed by extraterrestrial beings, they are still indigenous to this world, and the high-tech weapons of this world are still effective against them. Otherwise, the control of this world will not still be in the hands of other countries, but will long be controlled by those with abilities. Therefore, as they approached the blockade line of the Indian Army, Yan Xiao, Sahal, and several other capable individuals they encountered on the way sought refuge in a safer building and used communication devices to contact the Indian Army. Although Indians usually procrastinate in their work, perhaps due to the urgency of the situation, the efficiency of the Indian Army's work was very high. Soon, an Indian military officer appeared on the screen of the communicator and communicated with them well. "In 10 minutes, we will make a hole in the B5 area, and you can enter through that hole." "Understood." Nodding his head, Yan Xiao turned off the communicator after expressing his understanding. As Yan Xiao was the strongest among all the people present, everyone looked at him and wanted to hear what his plans were. However, what they didn't know was that after being tricked by his teammates a few times, Yan Xiao had always been on his own and didn't really understand the situation. Fortunately, the purpose of this time was very simple, so after thinking about it, Yan Xiao faced several people. "The plan is very simple. In 5 minutes, we will depart towards the B5 area. As soon as the time is up, we will follow the opening opened by the Indian army and enter. Yan Xiao added. But be careful, in case communication with the Indians doesn't go smoothly soon, we must be careful not to become the Indians' target. Yan Xiao has encountered this kind of thing before. When he was fighting against rebels for the local Zhengfu army in the Middle East, Yan Xiao had encountered such a thing before. If it weren't for Yan Xiao's exceptional strength at that time, he would have long knelt at the hands of the Zhengfu army. Although it was in India this time, considering the rumors he had heard in the past, Yan Xiao couldn't trust these Indians. At this moment, upon hearing Yan Xiao's words, Sahal and others nodded with lingering fear. Obviously, they have also encountered such situations in the past, and the results have not been very good. However, it's no wonder that among the people present, except for Sahal, a C+ capable individual, almost all of them except for one C.level capable individual are D.level and E.level. If such strength really becomes a target for gathering fire on the battlefield, it would be difficult not to suffer losses. Seeking collection and recommended tickets, ha. Chapter 9. Anger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It's not surprising that Yan Xiaohui is so careful. Let's not mention the infamous military discipline of the Indian military. The only thing that can prevent Yan Xiaohui from being careful is the misunderstanding caused by the Indians. In the early years, 6 years ago, there was even such an unfortunate incident. At that time, Major General S. Jamawal, the Chief of Staff of the Southern Command of the Indian Navy, was shot in the head during a military exercise. According to rumors, it was a new recruit from the Indian Navy at the time who had a problem with his firearms, so Major General Jamawar came forward to investigate. It's just that he couldn't check well, but he happened to follow the bullet hole. I don't know if it was a stroke of luck, but the new recruit actually pulled the trigger at this moment. The malfunctioning pistol was also fine at this moment, so with a bang, the unlucky Major General Jamawar was shot in the head, just as Yan Xiao and others were breaking through towards the outside of Kolkata. The masterminds behind all this, Hilgai and Nos, were standing next to a blood pool in the distant West Underground. North, how are you doing? Don't worry, this human has already said enough. As he spoke, Hilgai glanced at the unlucky ghost hanging from the iron chain in the blood pool. According to the intelligence provided by humans, the place we are currently in is a country called India, said North, with a surge of energy in his hand. Soon, the energy formed a globe-like object. This is India, and our current location is here, said North as he gestured in the infected area. Of course, he did not forget the unlucky Bangladesh. It's really a huge world. Although not compared, Hillary felt that the world before him was likely to be even larger than his own. The world is not just huge, North continued while maintaining the globe. According to the prisoner's account, this world has a population of over 7 billion, which is really huge. However, if it weren't for this, the plague we spread would not have infected hundreds of millions of people. Besides, what's obstructing us with the armies of this world are a group of guys called capable ones, said North, taking a glance at the unlucky guy locked in chains and continuing. Originally, there was no one with any abilities in this world, until 3 years ago, a large number of demon fruits flowed into this world. Devil's fruit. Hilgai, who was not even surprised to hear the words, devil's fruit, exclaimed in surprise. How could that thing also appear here? This is also something I am curious about. Speaking, North glanced at the unlucky guy again. However, none of these are important. The most important thing is that those born after eating the devil's fruit all have considerable power. According to the captive, our strength is equivalent to level A in this world, and there are no less than 10 level A power players in this world. A dozen or so. If that's really the case, it would be quite troublesome. Hilgai fell silent for a moment. It seems that we need to strengthen our strength as soon as possible. Speaking, Hilgai glanced curiously at the unlucky guy. Speaking of which, what level of ability is that prisoner of war? It's probably AAB. Level appearance, and the strongest variant we currently catalyze has only reached the C+ level. If it weren't for me personally taking action, those variants alone would probably not be able to deal with him. Hilgai nodded. Try to extract intelligence about this world as much as possible, and wait until this guy is useless. I wonder if this guy can still be reused after eating the devil's fruit. Don't worry. As he spoke, North's expression became somewhat eerie. I will make him use for us. Nodding, Hilgai hid himself under his cloak again, while North turned his gaze to the Indian-American capable man hanging on a chain, as if pondering how to continue unleashing his potential. Don't you all have long eyes, can't you tell we're our own people? Behind the blockade, Yan Xiao grabbed the officer's neck and angrily said. Behind Yan Xiao, Sahal and others also looked very angry. No wonder they were so angry. Although they had already contacted the Indian military during the breakout, they were still mistakenly injured by these so-called friendly forces when they broke out. Yan Xiao and Sahal were decent enough to say that the average level of firepower could not harm them, but the remaining people did not have their strength. As a result, by the time the explanation was clear, several of these people had already been injured. It is common to encounter incidents of accidental injuries on the battlefield. Since the injured party is only lightly injured, those Indians only need to apologize. Unfortunately, after discovering that it was their own people who were mistakenly injured, these Indians even shirked responsibility and even shifted it onto Yan Xiao and the others. After the altercation, the officer even ordered his subordinates to aim their guns at them. He didn't even think about what Yan Xiao and other people were doing. Although most of the capable members of the association belonged to the good people, they were not without temper. Therefore, as soon as the officer gave the order, Yan Xiao had already knocked down dozens of soldiers around him, and in the end, he even took the officer hostage. Do you know what you're doing? That officer was also tough, although he was a bit brainless, he still managed to hold on and speak when he was grabbed by Yan Xiao's neck and lifted off the ground. At this moment, other Indian soldiers on the blockade line seemed to have noticed what was happening in the rear, so they quickly divided out a portion of their troops to surround Yan Xiao, Sahal, and others. Even a few BMP.2 infantry tanks turned their guns around, facing the 30mm machine guns of the BMP.2, Yan Xiao and Sahal. The rest of the people became nervous. After all, not everyone can see the 30mm machine gun as nothing, let alone each BMP.2 with an anti-tank missile. How about it? If you want to apologize now, I might even consider letting you go. Noticing the tense expressions on the faces behind Yan Xiao, the officer said with a hint of mockery. It seems that you really want to seek death. Yan Xiao, who had originally taken the officer hostage on a whim, actually became a bit angry this time. Blackmail him. He doesn't even consider the strength of a single battalion in his eyes, let alone the current situation in India where he can't show much strength. If he really gets angry, Yan Xiao even has the ability to directly kill from Kolkata and return to the border. However, just as Yan Xiao was about to strangle the officer's neck, Sahal on the side stepped forward and stopped him. Don't be impulsive. Indeed, even if Yan Xiao has the ability to kill directly, the other people present do not have this ability. If we really want to take action, Yan Xiao, Sahal, and a few others can still talk, but the rest are doomed. Looking at Sahal, Yan Xiao naturally understood why he wanted to stop him. But among the people present, besides Sahal and him, there were only some strangers who had known him for a few hours, making him bow down for these strangers. If he really did, he wouldn't have been acting alone for 3 years. Feeling the hands on his neck like iron pliers slowly exerting force, the officer finally began to fear. Sahal's face also changed. Just as Yan Xiao was planning a route back to China, things finally had a turning point, seeking collection and recommended tickets. Chapter 10. 100 Million Tasks. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the windowsill of a 10-story building, a pair of fair long legs were dangling in mid-air, constantly swaying. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Looking through the telescope at the tense atmosphere on the ground in the distance, Youjia screamed excitedly. What happened? Beirut, who had just returned, was somewhat curious to see Yuga like this. I don't know either, but it looks like there's going to be a fight down there. Walking up to Yuga's side, Beirut also saw the situation below, and of course, also saw some other things. It seems like we can't start fighting anymore. Why? Look, Beirut pointed to the convoy approaching from afar. It seems that those people came over to handle the dispute. Upon hearing that it may not have been lively anymore, Youjia's pretty face clearly showed an unhappy expression. However, after about a few seconds, it seemed that some idea had come to mind, and Youjia's expression changed back again. Although Yuga didn't say anything, just looking at her expression, Beirut could already imagine it. Don't forget our mission this time. I know, isn't it just about uncovering the real culprit behind this incident and recruiting more like-minded powerful individuals? That's right, although the people below are not on the same path as us, our goals in this infection incident are the same, so it's better not to easily cause trouble for them. Upon hearing Beirut's words, although Yuga pouted, he didn't make any unnecessary movements. At this moment, Yan Xiao was not aware that there was a mischievous girl several hundred meters away who was preparing to add fuel to the fire. At this point, Yan Xiao had already started planning to kill them back to China from Kolkata. Anyway, since India is like this now, they probably won't bother to trouble me either. With this thought in mind, Yan Xiao grabbed the officer's hand and increased his strength again. Just as Yan Xiao was preparing to take action instead of a heart attack, and also letting the senior officer give him a hand, the distant convoy caught the attention of everyone present and delayed Yan Xiao's plan for a while. Fortunately, I finally caught up. Getting off the car and watching the atmosphere of the scene exploding, Brigitte couldn't help but feel relieved amidst nervousness. The capable individuals who have arrived from all over the world this time have all registered their information when entering India. Of course, there is no need to mention those who have not notified India. Due to the fact that Yan Xiao had registered before entering India, when the conflict arose, the Indian side quickly found information about Yan Xiao and others. Currently, the world has a population of over 7 billion, and there are only over 10 recorded A-level capable individuals. However, almost every one of these dozen or so people has the strength to confront a small country, so even a strong country like America will not easily offend an A-level capable person. Compared to A-level talents, there are undoubtedly many B-level talents like Yan Xiao, but even so, the number of B-level talents is only over 1,000, which may be even less than the number of giant pandas. And although it cannot be compared with A-level abilities, the strength of B-level abilities is still enough to attract people's attention, which is also why Brigitte will come over. The strength of B-level capable individuals is sufficient to withstand an army, and the current situation in India is extremely critical. Conservatively, it is estimated that at least 300 million people in the Ganges region have been infected, and over time, it may become increasingly severe. Not to mention everything that has happened within Bangladesh, otherwise the situation may be even worse. In this situation, high-level officials such as Brigitte naturally do not want to offend capable individuals like Yan Xiao. In fact, these RIs have dealt with many disputes between the military and capable individuals, and coupled with recent events, Brigitte has already been physically and mentally exhausted. However, even so, Brigitte still had to push himself forward to avoid things going in the wrong direction. Of course, Brigitte cannot neglect the face of his subordinates just for the sake of those with abilities. After all, the blockade line in Kolkata is now supported by them, and if it damages morale, it may be more troublesome than offending those with abilities. Fortunately, Brigitte is also a seasoned politician, so he handled this matter very well. Faced with an elderly man in his 60s and 70s who was exhausted all over, Yan Xiao dissipated a lot. After all, respecting the elderly and loving the young had been promoted for so many years, it was impossible for Yan Xiao to have no impact at all. Yan Xiao could not commit murder in front of an elderly person. After Birgit's kind words of persuasion and the officer's confession, Yan Xiao's anger almost dissipated. As soon as Yan Xiao's anger subsided, the other people's problems became less significant. After all, not everyone was willing to hike back to their own country. And they may not necessarily have the strength to do so. Really, even though I was going to fight, I'm not fighting anymore. Watching the scene calm down, Youjia pouted and felt a bit unhappy. Beirut on the side only smiled and continued to follow the messages on his notebook. We need to investigate the mastermind behind the scenes and look for like-minded companions. After putting down his notebook, Beirut, who was pondering carefully, turned to look at Youjia. Do you want to help Xing Fu in India together? All right. Youjia exclaimed excitedly. Otherwise, just waiting here would be too boring. Although the incident was perfectly quelled afterwards, a rift arose between Yan Xiao and the rest of the world. After all, at that time, Yan Xiao disregarded the safety of others solely based on his will, and everyone present could see it. At that time, we were all in the same camp, so it was not much of a problem. Now that the incident has subsided, it is natural that others cannot coexist peacefully with someone who disregards their own life and death as if nothing had happened. Fortunately, due to Yan Xiao's B.level ability, Birgit arranged a separate area for him in the military camp, so nothing happened again. After resting in the military camp for a day, Yan Xiao also began his entrusted task. To help the Indian army defend the bridge leading to the opposite bank of the river. It's really unbeatable to kill. Sitting cross-legged above a concrete structure, Yan Xiao rubbed his shoulders with some emotion as he watched the incessant gunfire around him. Although Yan Xiao's ability to electrocute cannot achieve a deadly effect on advanced mutants, it is still not a problem if it is just an ordinary infected person. In addition, the situation is critical, and Yan Xiao has never stopped his work in the past 3 days. Therefore, at least tens of thousands of infected people in the city have turned into charcoal in his hands. With the help of the Indian army and others, at least 1 or 2 million infected individuals were cleared in 3 days. Of course, the losses suffered by the Indian army during these 3 days are definitely not small. After all, Kolkata is a city with millions of people, and considering the population of the surrounding areas, the number of infected individuals is definitely not a small number. Mr. Yen, the bridge is about to explode. The commander ordered everyone to evacuate Kolkata. While Yan Xiao was still lamenting, an officer spoke in awe. Obviously, he has not forgotten the appearance of Yan Xiao when he fought alone with more than 10 variants not long ago. Upon hearing the officer's words, Yan Xiao didn't say anything like, "I'll leave first, you guys." Instead, he nodded and turned around to leave. In fact, after 3 days, Yan Xiao was already exhausted, and even a few of the $10,000 war knives in his hand had been chopped up after the order was issued. The capable individuals in the city began to gradually evacuate Kolkata. Although the number of B.level capable individuals was comparable to Panda's, as the most important city in the epidemic area, Kolkata still had many capable individuals of the same level as Yan Xiao. In fact, if it weren't for the gathering of thousands of capable individuals in the city, the blockade line of the Indian army might not have been able to be sustained. After all, Kolkata alone has millions of infected people, and the population in the surrounding areas. After the capable withdrew from Kolkata, the troops responsible for the rear of the city also began to gradually withdraw from the city. When the last military vehicle left the bridge, several bridges that originally connected Kolkata to the opposite bank of the river were blown in two by explosives. Even many infected individuals standing across the river were lifted into mid-air by the air waves generated by the explosion. What a spectacular sight! Watching several steel pillars lifted into the air, the soldiers and capable individuals on the riverbank exclaimed in admiration. After evacuating from the city, the troops were also considered safe because the infected individuals on the opposite side had not yet evolved the ability to swim, and there were too few variants that could cross the river. In addition, the target was too large, and it was estimated that they had already been shot down by machine guns and anti-aircraft guns before crossing the river. Therefore, after the bridge was blown up, Yan Shao found a place arranged for him to live and lay down. In the past 3 years, although Yan Shao has also received many commissions, he has never tried to fight non-stop for 3 consecutive days. Therefore, this time it was a great consumption for Yan Shao, whether it was Jing Shin Shang or *** Shang, so he slept until the next afternoon. I will keep my promise even when I arrive. The next day, when he woke up, he watched as Yan Shao, who had already received the payment into his account, collapsed back onto the bed. He also knew that at this time, India could not be untrustworthy. After all, 3 years ago, India only had over 1 million troops. Although today, 3 years later, India has expanded its troops to over 3 million, and there are also over 3 million reserves, it is impossible to compete with hundreds of millions of infected individuals with such a small force. As for continuing to expand, the weapons are good to say, but ammunition is a serious problem. It's not that India cannot make it, but rather a matter of cost and quality. If there is a quality issue with the production of 200 million and 100 million, it is natural to say that it is better to buy than to make. During the 1999 Indo-Pakistani conflict, 155mm shells were fired out and had to be transported by air from Europe. In this situation, if India wants to expand its military, even if it has enough weapons, where will the ammunition come from? Therefore, India will never offend capable individuals. Just as Yan Shao was thinking about how to spend this reward, the communicator on his arm lit up. What's going on? Looking at Naya appearing on the screen, Yan Shao asked lazily. Naya didn't talk to Yan Shao either, but went straight to the point. India's Zheng Fu plans to recruit a team to go deep into Bihar. Are you interested? Bihar. Yan Shao sat up straight. Isn't that the birthplace of the virus? That's right, so Zheng Fu from India plans to go deep there and gather some information. What is the compensation? 100 million per person. Seeking collection and recommended tickets.